I never thought it would come to this. My name is Jake, and I'm just an ordinary guy with an ordinary life. I had a decent job, a cozy home, and a wife I thought I could trust. Her name is Lisa. We'd been married for 6 years, and until recently, I genuinely believed we had a solid relationship. But like all good things, it turned out to be a facade, slowly crumbling beneath the weight of lies and betrayal. In the beginning, everything felt perfect. Lisa was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her vibrant personality and quick wit. She seemed to love the life we had built together, and I thought our future was bright. However, over the last few months, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior, little things that gnawed at me but didn't seem significant at first. She started coming home late from work more often, claiming that her boss was piling on projects. I accepted this without question, wanting to be supportive. After all, we all have demanding jobs, right? But then there were the phone calls. Lisa would often take them in another room, speaking in hushed tones, laughing. In a way that felt a bit too flirty for my comfort. I brushed it off, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. After all, I loved her and wanted to believe the best about her. Still, those little pangs of doubt grew into something more substantial, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The breaking point came one Sunday afternoon when I was supposed to be out running errands. I decided to take a detour and grab a coffee from a cafe down the street. As I walked in, my heart sank. There, sitting at a small table, was Lisa, and across from her was our personal chef, Mark. They were laughing, sharing a plate of pastries, and leaning in close to each other. I felt the world tilt beneath me. Memories of Mark prepping our meals, his jovial nature, and the way Lisa would compliment his cooking flooded my mind, twisting the knife deeper. I stood frozen, clutching my coffee cup, watching the scene unfold. Lisa's head was thrown back in laughter, and Mark, with his charming smile, was clearly enjoying her attention. Everything I had been suspecting solidified into a sharp, painful truth. I had to get out of there before I made a scene. Driving home, my mind raced. I felt like I was in a movie, but this was my life, and the betrayal cut deeper than any fictional plot. I tried to convince myself that I was wrong, that there had to be an explanation. But in my gut, I knew what I had seen, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. When Lisa came home, I confronted her. "Where were you today?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it trembled with suppressed rage. She looked taken aback, her eyes widening as she forced a laugh. "Oh, I was just out with Mark. We were discussing a new recipe for the upcoming catering event." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily, so casually. "Right," I replied, my voice low and dangerous. "A recipe that requires you to share pastries and laugh like that. You're kidding yourself if you think I would buy that." The confrontation escalated quickly. Lisa's demeanor shifted. She became defensive, accusing me of being insecure and overreacting. Her voice rose, filled with indignation as she called me paranoid, claiming I was imagining things, but I had seen the truth with my own eyes. I didn't want to drag this out any longer, so I pushed harder, demanding the truth. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Her expression faltered for just a moment, and I knew then that I had hit the nail on the head. She finally admitted it, her confession spilling out as if it were nothing more than an inconvenience to her. I felt my world shatter piece by piece. The rage inside me was boiling, but I was also engulfed in an overwhelming tide of betrayal and sadness. I was devastated. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with was now standing in front of me, someone I barely recognized. How could she do this? How could she betray our vows? The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I felt anger rising like smoke in my chest, but alongside it was an unshakable sadness. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about losing the future I had envisioned, the love I had thought was real. I felt like a fool for ever trusting her. This wasn't just a betrayal of love, it was a betrayal of our life together. I had to think clearly to figure out what I was going to do next. I wanted revenge, but I also wanted to reclaim my self-worth and power. To be continued. After the confrontation, I was a swirling mess of emotions. I spent the entire night tossing and turning, replaying every moment, every laugh I thought was ours, now tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. I kept thinking about Mark, the man who had wormed his way into my house, into my life, and into my wife. He was supposed to be a friend, someone who enhanced our meals and made our lives easier. Instead, he had become the source of my heartbreak. The following days were a blur. Lisa was desperate to explain herself, trying to perform damage control, but every word out of her mouth felt hollow. She claimed it was just a fling, that it meant nothing, and that she loved me. But love doesn't drive a person into the arms of another. I felt sick listening to her excuses, her justifications. I had to remind myself that the woman standing before me was not the same one I had married. She was a stranger, cloaked in deceit. I reached out to friends for support, but it was difficult to explain the situation. How do you tell someone that your wife, the woman you shared your life with, had chosen to betray you with your personal chef? I felt embarrassed, ashamed, like I had somehow failed to be a good husband. Some friends were supportive, but others suggested that I give her another chance. They thought it was just a rough patch, something we could work through. I was torn. Part of me wanted to salvage what we had, but the other part was screaming for justice, for revenge. I decided to channel my anger into something productive. I had always admired good cooking, but had never taken the time to learn. I realized that if Lisa had found satisfaction in Mark's kitchen, then maybe I should learn to cook better than both of them combined. I wanted to take back control of my life and my own kitchen. I signed up for culinary classes at a local community college, eager to learn the art of cooking. As I stepped into that first class, I felt a rush of adrenaline. There was a sense of empowerment as I chopped vegetables and learned how to sauté. I started to lose myself in the process. I was no longer the heartbroken husband. I was a student, focusing on my craft. With every lesson, I honed my skills, from mastering sauces to perfecting pastries. I even learned how to cook the dishes that Lisa had always raved about, the ones that Mark had made for her. Cooking became my therapy. I found solace in the rhythm of chopping and the fragrant spices that filled my kitchen. I began experimenting, creating dishes that I could only dream of making before. The more I learned, the more I realized how much I enjoyed cooking. It was liberating. I was taking back a part of my life that I had neglected for too long. As the weeks passed, I grew more confident. I invited friends over for dinner parties, showcasing my newfound skills. They were shocked when I told them I had learned to cook only recently. The compliments fueled my motivation, and I reveled in the satisfaction of creating something delicious. It felt good to reclaim my space and to find joy in cooking, a passion I had never fully explored. But there was still a nagging thought in the back of my mind. Revenge. Would it be enough to just improve myself? Part of me wanted to confront Mark, to show him that I was not just a passive victim in this situation. I wanted to prove that I could be better than both of them. I started planning how I would execute my revenge, but I didn't want it to come from a place of aggression. I wanted it to be cunning, something that would leave a lasting impression. As I immersed myself in culinary pursuits, I also kept tabs on Lisa. She was attempting to mend our relationship, offering half-hearted apologies and making promises to change. But I wasn't interested in her empty words. I was building something new, and I could feel the weight of betrayal starting to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. I was tired of being the one who felt wronged. I wanted to reclaim my dignity and show them both that I was not just a man scorned, but a husband who could rise from the ashes of betrayal. Each day I plotted the perfect revenge, not just for my self-worth, but also to make a statement. One evening, while cooking a particularly ambitious meal, I had an idea. I would host a dinner party and invite Lisa and Mark. It would be the ultimate showdown, a chance to showcase my talents, my growth, and my ability to take control of my life. I imagined their faces when they tasted food that put Mark's cooking to shame. I wanted them to witness my transformation, to see that I was not going to wallow in sorrow, but instead emerge stronger. The plan was set in motion. I would craft a menu that would impress even the most discerning palates. I would turn my pain into art and serve it on a plate. To be continued. As I developed my culinary skills, the idea of hosting a dinner party morphed from a mere thought into an ambitious plan that consumed my mind. I meticulously crafted a menu that I knew would not only showcase my cooking, but also serve as a powerful statement to both Lisa and Mark. It was time to take charge of my narrative and rewrite the story of my life, one dish at a time. I started by selecting the perfect date, 2 weeks away. I would give myself ample time to prepare and rehearse the dishes, to ensure everything was flawless. I chose to create a multi-course meal that would highlight my skills, making each course more complex than the last. There would be an appetizer of seared scallops with a lemon butter sauce, followed by a refreshing arugula salad with homemade vinaigrette. The main course would be a succulent herb-crusted rack of lamb, paired with creamy garlic mashed potatoes and roasted seasonal vegetables. And for dessert, a rich chocolate lava cake with homemade vanilla bean ice cream. With the dates circled on my calendar, I began my preparations. I spent hours perfecting each recipe, experimenting with flavors and honing my techniques. I watched countless cooking videos and read up on food presentation to ensure that not only would the tastes be extraordinary, but the plates would be a feast for the eyes. This was more than just a dinner. This was my declaration. I sent the invitation to Lisa, making sure to keep the tone light. Hey, I'd love for you and Mark to come over for dinner next Saturday. I've been working on some new recipes and want to share them with you both. Let me know if you can make it. She responded almost immediately, excitement lacing her message, oblivious to the underlying motive. Of course, I can't wait to see what you've been up to in the kitchen. Mark and I will be there. As the day of the dinner approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would they appreciate my cooking? Would Lisa see me in a different light? Or would she continue to view me as the man she had betrayed? I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on what I could control: the food. The evening finally arrived, and I spent the day preparing, ensuring every detail was perfect. The table was set with sparkling glassware, polished silverware, and elegantly folded napkins. I lit candles to create a warm and inviting atmosphere, and the aroma of the dishes wafted through the air, filling the house with tantalizing scents. When Lisa and Mark arrived, they were greeted by the inviting warmth of my home, and I could see the surprise on their faces as they took in the setup. Lisa complimented the decor, seemingly pleased, while Mark took a moment to survey the kitchen, perhaps assessing the competition. I pushed down the nerves that bubbled within me. This was my moment. We gathered at the table, and as I served the appetizer, I could feel the tension in the air. Lisa's eyes widened with delight as she took her first bite. I watched her expression closely, searching for any hint of guilt or regret. Mark seemed impressed as well, but I noticed a flicker of concern in his eyes. Perhaps he realized that I was no longer the passive husband he could brush aside. With each course, I found myself growing more confident. I engaged them in conversation, trying to keep the mood light while subtly throwing in remarks about my newfound culinary passion. I described in detail the techniques I had learned, how I had dedicated myself to improving my skills, not just for the dinner but for my own growth. I could see their discomfort growing, especially in Mark, who squirmed under the weight of my words. As we moved on to the main course, Lisa couldn't help but gush over the flavors. "Jake, this is incredible. I didn't know you had it in you," she exclaimed, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thanks, Lisa. It's amazing what a little motivation can do," I replied, my voice steady, but I could feel the underlying tension. Mark tried to interject with his own culinary experiences, but I could sense his confidence waning. It was becoming increasingly clear that he was outmatched. I served the dessert, my piece de resistance, and watched as they took their first bites, their faces melting into expressions of bliss. I savored the moment as they both relished in the flavors, knowing that I had surpassed their expectations. With each compliment they gave, I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. I was reclaiming my power, redefining who I was in the face of betrayal. But I wasn't done yet. After dessert, as we sat back to relax, I decided it was time to set the record straight. "Lisa, I hope you're enjoying everything. I've been working hard to improve myself," I said, slowly, deliberately. And I think it's important to share that improvement not just in the kitchen but in life. 2. Trust is a two-way street, and it's clear that it's been broken in our relationship. Her expression faltered, and I could see her struggling to form a response. Jake, I cut her off, the flood of emotion surging within me. I need you to understand that what you did hurt me deeply. I'm not here to beg for your forgiveness or to salvage what's left. I'm here to show you that I am more than what you thought of me. I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I won't be a victim of your choices. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier bravado deflating. I could tell he was caught off guard by my confrontation, and part of me relished in the discomfort I was causing. I want you both to know that this is not the end of my story. I'm moving forward, and I'll be just fine without either of you. I just wanted you to see me for who I am now, not who I was before. A heavy silence fell over the table, and I could feel a sense of triumph swelling within me. I had executed, planned flawlessly, and I had regained my confidence and self-worth. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, to be continued. The silence that settled over the table was thick and charged. I could see Lisa's expression shift from surprise to discomfort as the weight of my words sank in. Mark was visibly tense, glancing from me to Lisa, unsure of how to react. I felt a rush of adrenaline, having finally confronted both of them. It was liberating to voice my feelings after so long of keeping them bottled up. Lisa took a deep breath, her facade cracking just a little. Jake, I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her tone pleading. I messed up and I'm so sorry. It was a stupid mistake and it meant nothing to me. I love you and I want to make this work. I couldn't help but scoff at her words. Love? You call that love? You betrayed me with Mark, someone I trusted, someone who was supposed to help us. You think I can just forget that? You think I can just go back to how things were? Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between us. Maybe you both need to talk this out, he interjected, his voice shaky. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I thought it was just a fling, a fling. I shot back, my anger bubbling to the surface. You think this is just a game? You think I'm going to sit here and let you both walk all over me? I've had enough of this. I never wanted it to go this far, Jake, Mark continued, trying to defend himself. I thought Lisa and I were just having fun, and it was never meant to hurt you. Fun. I felt the heat rising in my chest. You broke my trust, both of you. You think I'm just going to accept an apology and move on? No, it's not that easy. I could see Lisa's frustration bubbling over now. You're making it sound like I did this on purpose. I was lonely, Jake. You were always busy with work and I felt neglected. It just happened. Her words hit me like a slap. I had been focused on my career, thinking I was doing the right thing by providing for us. All the while I hadn't noticed her growing discontent, yet it didn't excuse her actions. You don't get to play the victim here, Lisa. You made a choice. We all have our struggles, but that's not a license to cheat. The tension in the room hung thick, but I felt a sense of clarity. I had finally voiced what had been building inside me, and it felt empowering. I was no longer the passive husband, but a man taking control of his life. Let's be real here, I continued, my voice steady. I'm not interested in saving this relationship. I don't even know if I can look at either of you the same way again. I'm done with the lies and the deceit. Lisa's face fell, and for a brief moment I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. What do you want me to say? I messed up. I can't take it back, but I want to fix things. I'll do anything, Jake. Anything. I echoed, my tone cold. What could you possibly do to fix this? Trust is broken. You can't just erase what happened with a few pretty words. Mark was silent now, his bravado completely gone. I could see that he was finally understanding the consequences of his actions. I felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I had taken a stand for myself, and it felt good. Tonight was meant to be about showcasing my growth, my reclaiming of self-worth, I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. But I see now that it's also about closure. I need to move on. Both of you need to understand that I am not the same man I was before. I won't be pushed around or manipulated anymore. I stood up, signaling that the dinner was over. You both can leave now. I think we've said enough. Lisa looked like she was about to protest, but to my surprise, she nodded. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but I had no sympathy left. I had given her enough chances. I had been patient for far too long. Mark rose as well, his demeanor deflated. "I'm sorry, Jake," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to go this far. You should have thought about that before you crossed the line," I shot back, feeling no remorse for my harshness. "You both need to figure out your own mess." With that, I walked them to the door and watched as they left. A sense of relief washed over me, mingled with the lingering pain of betrayal. I closed the door, leaning against it for a moment, allowing the reality of the situation to settle in. I had taken a stand, and while it didn't fix everything, it felt like a crucial step toward healing. I was reclaiming my life, and it was time to fully embrace my new identity. As I stood in the silence of my home, I reflected on the journey I had embarked upon since discovering Lisa's infidelity. I was no longer just Jake, the husband. I was Jake, the man who had learned to cook and rediscovered his passion. I was someone who would no longer accept being treated poorly. In the days that followed, I turned my focus inward, dedicating myself to personal growth. I continued to take culinary classes, but I also began exploring other aspects of my life that had been neglected, like fitness and self-care. I started hitting the gym regularly, channeling my anger and frustration into workouts. I found that with each drop of sweat, I was shedding the weight of the past. But I didn't want to stop there. I began reaching out to new friends, connecting with people who shared my interests, and building a support system that was rooted in honesty. I realized that I had been so focused on my relationship with Lisa that I had neglected my own needs, my own happiness. It was liberating to take control of my life again, to cultivate my passions and pursue new interests. I was becoming a better version of myself, and each day felt like a fresh start. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. I had a long way to go, but I was finally walking the path of self-discovery. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I would come out stronger on the other side. To be continued. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself immersed in a new routine. The culinary classes continued to be a source of joy and growth, but I also started branching out into other areas of my life. I began exploring local art classes, trying my hand at painting and pottery. It was liberating to tap into my creativity, and I discovered that these activities provided a much-needed outlet for my emotions. I made new friends who appreciated my passion for cooking and supported my efforts to redefine myself. They encouraged me to participate in local cooking competitions, and while I initially hesitated, I decided to leap into the deep end. I signed up for a small cook-off in town, excited yet nervous about showcasing my skills on a public stage. As the competition day approached, I practiced relentlessly. I created unique dishes that combined my culinary training with my newfound creativity. The day of the competition arrived, and the energy in the air was palpable. I stood alongside other aspiring chefs, and despite the nervousness fluttering in my stomach, I felt a sense of excitement. When my turn came, I stepped up to the station, fueled by adrenaline and determination. I plated my dish, a fusion of flavors with a modern twist, and presented it to the judges. As they tasted my creation, I held my breath, waiting for their feedback. To my delight, they praised my dish, complimenting the balance of flavors and the creativity behind it. Winning the competition was not just about the accolade. It was a validation of my journey, of the hard work I had put in to become someone new. However, amidst all this personal growth, I occasionally found myself reflecting on Lisa and Mark. I had heard through mutual friends that they were attempting to navigate their relationship, but honestly, I didn't pay much attention. I was far too focused on my own life, my own happiness, to dwell on their choices. But one evening, after a particularly successful dinner party with new friends, Lisa showed up at my door. I was taken aback. I hadn't expected to see her again. She looked different, more subdued, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a simple dress. "Hey, Jake," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. "Can we talk?" I felt a rush of emotions. Anger, confusion, and a hint of sympathy all collided within me. I stepped aside, allowing her to enter, but I had no intention of letting her off easy. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked, my tone steely. I know I've messed everything up, she began, her voice trembling. But I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last saw each other. I realize now how much I took for granted. You've changed so much, and I don't want to lose you. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Her words felt rehearsed, lacking sincerity. You think you can just waltz back in and expect everything to be okay? It doesn't work that way, I replied, trying to keep my composure. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, she said quickly. But I want to try and fix things to start over. I miss you, Jake. Miss me, or miss the life we had. I shot back, my frustration bubbling to the surface. You were the one who made a choice to betray me. You had your fun with Mark, and now you want to come back to me like it never happened. She looked down, her expression pained. I know I hurt you, and I can't take it back. But I've realized that I messed up in so many ways. I want to work on myself to become the person you deserve. Do you even understand what that means? I asked, crossing my arms. You talk about change, but change doesn't happen overnight. You hurt me in a way that's hard to forget, and I'm not sure I want to open that door again. I know I don't deserve your trust right now, she said, her voice breaking. But I genuinely want to prove to you that I can be better. I can't bear the thought of losing you. I made a mistake, and it's haunted me every day since. I was torn. Part of me wanted to believe her. She had always been good at playing the remorseful partner. But another part of me reminded me of the pain, the betrayal that lingered in the back of my mind. What do you expect me to say? Just because you feel bad now doesn't erase what you did. I've moved on in ways I never thought I could, and I'm not sure I want to revisit this. She took a step closer, her eyes pleading. I understand if you time, Jake. I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I'll give you space, but please don't shut me out completely. I sighed, feeling the weight of the moment bearing down on me. I can't promise anything, Lisa. I need to think about what's best for me. I've spent too long living in the shadow of our past, and I refuse to go back to being that guy. I understand, she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. Thank you for hearing me out, Jake. I really hope we can figure this out someday. With that, she turned and left, leaving me standing there, feeling a mix of relief and confusion. I had finally put my foot down, but the encounter left me questioning everything once again. Did I want to open myself up to the possibility of reconciliation, or was I better off moving forward without her? In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on our conversation. I had made significant strides in my personal growth, but could I afford to let her back into my life? I didn't want to repeat the cycle of pain and betrayal. I decided to reach out to my friends for advice. They had seen me transform, and their insights would help me navigate this newfound dilemma. Over pizza and beer, I shared the details of my conversation with Lisa. Their responses varied, but they all emphasized one thing: I needed to trust my instincts. You've worked hard to build yourself back up, Jake. If you think going back to her will set you back, then don't do it. One friend advised, and I nodded, feeling a sense of comfort in their words. As I continued to grapple with my feelings, I made a conscious decision to prioritize my well-being. I had come too far to let anyone, even Lisa, jeopardize my newfound happiness. I would take my time, allow myself to heal, and focus on the journey ahead, whatever that may entail. To be continued. As the days turned into weeks, I found a rhythm in my life that felt right. I continued to cook, refine my skills, and even began to experiment with my own recipes. Each dish I created was a testament to my journey, a blend of flavors that reflected my growth, resilience, and newfound freedom. I found myself surrounded by friends who appreciated not only my cooking but also the man I had become. One evening, while I was preparing a new dish for a small gathering, I received a message from Lisa. She wanted to meet again, to talk. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something compelled me to at least hear her out. I agreed to meet her at a local cafe, wanting to keep things neutral and casual. When I walked in, I spotted her sitting at a corner table. She looked different from the last time I saw her, more composed, but there was still an unmistakable hint of vulnerability in her eyes. I took a deep breath and approached her, ready to listen but prepared to stand my ground. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," she said, her voice steady. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked." "Me too," I replied, taking a seat. "What's on your mind?" I know I messed up, and I understand if you don't want to hear anything from me. She started, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, but I've been working on myself. I've started seeing a therapist, and I'm trying to understand why I made the decisions I did. I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself. I listened carefully, feeling a mix of skepticism and curiosity. That's good to hear, Lisa. It's important to take responsibility for your actions, but I still need to know if you're truly committed to changing. Words are easy, but actions speak louder. I know, she replied, her eyes earnest. I've been trying to make amends with everyone I hurt, including you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to show you that I'm serious about changing. Why now? I pushed gently. Why did it take losing me for you to start changing? Because I took everything for granted, she confessed. I thought I could have it all without considering the consequences of my actions. I didn't appreciate what I had until it was gone. It was a painful lesson, and I don't want to repeat it. I sat in silence, weighing her words. It was hard to reconcile the woman who had hurt me with the one sitting in front of me taking responsibility. I'm not going to lie, Lisa. It's going to take time for me to trust you again, if that's even possible. Trust is earned, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she said earnestly. I don't want to pressure you into anything, but I hope we can start rebuilding. I miss having you in my life. I felt a pang of nostalgia wash over me. There had been good times, laughter and love, but there had also been pain and betrayal. I've changed, Lisa. I'm not the same guy you once knew. I've learned to stand on my own, to prioritize my happiness. She nodded, her expression softening. And I want to support you in that. I don't expect us to jump back into being a couple overnight, but I hope we can at least be friends. I want to prove to you that I can be someone you can rely on again. The conversation lingered in the air, a fragile bridge between what had been and what could be. I wasn't ready to fully embrace her back into my life, but I could appreciate her efforts. I think it's best if we take things slow, I said cautiously. Let's see where this goes, but understand that I'm not willing to rush into anything. Of course, she replied with a small, hopeful smile. I'll respect your boundaries. Just know that I'm here and I'm serious about making things right. As we wrapped up our conversation, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected: hope. Perhaps there was a chance for a new beginning, albeit a tentative one. I still had my reservations, but I was willing to explore the possibility of friendship, knowing that it would take time for trust to be rebuilt. Over the next few months, we began to connect more often. Our conversations were genuine, and I found myself slowly lowering my guard. Lisa demonstrated her commitment to change, sharing stories of her therapy sessions and her journey towards self-discovery. I was cautious, but something within me began to thaw. I focused on my own growth as well, continuing to develop my culinary skills and expanding my social circle. I participated in more cooking competitions, and with each win, I felt a renewed sense of pride and purpose. My life was richer and more fulfilling than it had ever been, and I refused to let anyone take that away from me again. As the seasons changed, I invited Lisa to one of my dinner parties. It felt like a big step, but I wanted to gauge how we interacted in a social setting. To my surprise, she was a hit with my friends, and the evening was filled with laughter and warmth. I saw glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, and it reminded me that people can change, even when they've made terrible mistakes. Eventually, I realized that I had reached a place of acceptance. I could appreciate the lessons learned from my past without allowing them to dictate my future. I was no longer the hurt husband seeking vengeance. I was Jake, a man who had reclaimed his power and happiness. In this journey of healing, I learned that life is a tapestry of experiences, woven together with love, pain, and growth. I had discovered my passion, my strength, and my worth, and I wasn't willing to compromise that for anyone. Whether or not Lisa and I would ever reignite our romantic relationship remained uncertain, but I found solace in the knowledge that I was moving forward, one delicious step at a time.